Welcome back to the No Genius YouTube channel. Today we have part two of an interview that I did with Mr. Scott Carson. I just had too many questions for the time frame that we had to work within, so I wanted to have Scott back on to get into it a little deeper. And I actually kind of want to target this interview towards maybe those people who are looking to get into the note industry and get started. November marks Today is November 1st, and this marks about a year since I decided that note investing was for me. And so I've learned a lot of lessons in this first year alone. But I kind of want to hear it from Scott as far as someone who's maybe in the early stages of their note investing, or even maybe someone who's been around the industry for a while and maybe not getting the results that they desire. So Scott, welcome back.
Hey, Brian, honored to be here again, buddy, and to deliver some content to your amazing audience. So thank you again for having me back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Much appreciated. So yeah, let's just start off with for someone who may see our content, you have your YouTube channel, I have this Note Genius channel here, and say, oh wow, like note investing sounds really cool. But I've never heard of it before, so I'm sure most other people have never heard of it before. How can someone maybe go about introducing this to people who they may want to partner with or they may want to present a deal to, without coming off like you're talking about some crazy stuff? How can you kind of get this into people's heads?
So the first thing is to simplify it down and tell people, and everybody's already in the note business. Everybody out there, if you've got a mortgage, a car note, student loan debt, credit card debt, you owe your Uncle Bubba Joe down the street $50, you're in the IOU business, all right? That's the note business. You're just on the wrong side of the payment stream. You're putting money out. You want the money coming in. And that's what the note business is all about, is buying mortgages. That's what I like to focus on, buying debt at a discount to make your profit. So that's the thing I always like to tell people, like, listen, I don't own the property. I'm actually becoming the bank. I'm literally buying the note, whether it's a institutional loan from a lender, a hedge fund, or an owner finance. I'm buying that note at a bank, and we get cash flow and profits in either A, monthly payments for cash flow at a good yield, at above average yield, skin from the borrowers if it's a non-performing on the front side. We have them bring some money to the table to, justify us allowing them to stay in their house if they've been behind. And then either we get paid off sometime in the future from them refinancing, selling the house, or just paying over time. Or if they don't pay ball, I'm the bank. All right. The bank always wins. We'll foreclose, take and either A, sell the note at the auction, like a foreclosure auction and make our money there, or we'll take the property back and sell the asset now and make even more money doing that. So that's always tell folks, you're buying to become the bank. You see the big banks out there with the big buildings. I'm just a smaller version of that. This is the bank of Scott Carson. All right. The bank of Bryan. Oh, I like that. We got to do, you need to start doing the hashtag bank of Bryan when you close on deals, Brian. All right.
That's a good one. We might clip that part out so I can save it.
Or just make sure more makes people start following you on that. But that's the biggest thing. It's like, listen, we're in real estate, but we're the how should we say that, the evolved investor. Everybody wants to be the bank, everybody wants to be the lender. When you get into real estate investing, you figure out, oh, being the lender makes sense. And that's what it comes down to, is that we're being the lender, but we're buying this distressed stuff at a discount, you know, at a bigger discount. And that's what I always loved about non-performing stuff. The lower you buy, usually others, the higher the lower the risk we have, but when you buy at a bigger discount, you know what I mean?
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so on that topic of just trying to figure out your game plan and how you want to hold a certain role within this business, when we're talking strategy, do you think it makes more sense to go after performers early or non-performers? And is there a certain I guess everyone has different goals, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has different investment goals. But you listen to people who talk about real estate. No, I have 100 doors, or I have, things like that. Do you think that there's a certain target that people should be pursuing as far as asset value, or a certain number of notes, or what's a good thing to shoot for when you're getting into it?
I love that question. And one of the things that we always do with our coaches students is ask them, what do you want to do? And what we find is that most real estate investors, they want to do one of two things. A, they either want to invest their hard-earned savings or retirement accounts into something that's going to give them a good yield, and whatever that yield is, whether it's 8 or 12 or 20, whatever it is, you can achieve that. And it's going to take a little bit more work depending on how aggressive you want to be. 8%. You could go buy performing notes right now and make 8 to 10% yield on your money. Buying hard money loans or doing some short-term funding on some stuff. You could buy, I see performing stuff come across my desk all the time on some scratch and dent stuff from different funds that can be a good yield because the interest rate's at 6 or 7, and you could, if you wanted to make an 8 to 10, there you go. If you don't have money and you got to go borrow other people's money, it makes it you have to market a little bit differently. You have to target stuff that can get a higher yield for you. But the question is, what's that why? Is it A, you're wanting to replace the income from a job, or you want to what's the word? Bring in a little bit more money for your retirement. So if you're wanting to replace a job and replace the 5 grand a month or the 10 grand a month you have a job to do that, great. Let's figure out a plan that works for you. You don't do it overnight. Don't go quit. It's a bit of runway, but you can do one thing. So like I always tell folks, like, listen, if you want to make 10 grand a month on cash flow, okay, take 10 grand a month and divide that by $400 a month. And that's about the average monthly cash flow we see coming in off of a lower value note, $400. Anything below 200 is way too narrow. Your servicing costs are going to eat it up and doesn't make any sense. You might as well target $400. So that means if you take $10,000 and divide that by $400, that comes to 25 notes. Okay. You can find a note that's going to pay you $400 a month cash flow pretty easy right now. Okay. Now you may not find 25 this month, but you can start off buying one note a month. And honestly, over the next 25 months, you look back in 2 years, you've replaced your 10 grand income and done it, seen it done. We've seen many of our coaching students do it because that's the plan that we challenge to do. That means, though, if you take the numbers, break it down even more, that you're going to have about a 10% closing ratio on your notes as a new note investor. That means you need to make 10 offers a month to hit that one. Okay. That's the number where most people don't hit to. They only look at what's in their account. Well, I only got 50 grand in my checking account or my savings account, so I'm only going to make 50 grand worth of offers. Well, that might be on one note. And that's, oh, it didn't get accepted, so they got to wait. I always tell people to make 10 times what you got, because that way it'll force you, if you do get more than one accepted, to go raise money for the other things. And market says, but you have a much more likelihood of closing on things because you're going to have to go through due diligence, values, title work, condition the property, condition the collateral file. So that's the thing that I think that we have a higher success rate because we teach our students to bid on more deals, and that way it'll filter down to have much more likelihood success of closing on a deal to hit their numbers. So just do that simple number. Take your monthly income, what you want to replace, divide it by $400 on a month. That'll give you an average idea of the number of deals you need to close on, and then multiply that number times 10 on the number that will equate to the number of offers you need to make. So simplifying the numbers is much easier to do. You look at, I always laugh because I see these financial podcasts come out and say, oh, you got to have $4 million in the bank to retire these days. I'm like, yeah, you got to accumulate $4 million. Well, the reason 67% of Americans have given up on retirement is because of that ass backwards thinking. Like, oh, never done anything. I haven't saved, so I don't have any money. I'm just going to give up work till I'm 90. Well, no. Let's reverse engineer it. If you got 10 grand coming off notes, that equates to 120 grand a year income. 120 grand a year at a 6%. If that was a 6% yield off your money, that would be like having like $7 million savings. Okay. So you can reverse your engineering, reverse your time, but that means you got to work for 2 years. We're not talking 40 hours a week, but 5-10 hours a week, making offers, marketing. You can achieve financial independence by doing those things right there. And it just comes from looking at the numbers differently. You know what I mean, Brian? Some people look at one thing and they give up. You talked about doors. Yeah, a lot of investors look at, oh, I want to own doors. Well, what's that door paying you? $200 a month on average for rent? That's a whole lot of work and a whole lot of upkeep, property management, stuff like that. I don't want to own property. I want to own notes. All right. Nobody calls the bank when little Timmy flushes his rubber ducky down the toilet. You know what I mean? When the AC breaks, I'm the bank. You're responsible for that.
Right. Do you think that it's worth it to buy partial notes?
So is it worth it to buy partials? Yes and no. Okay. Partials are the most overblown, over-exaggerated aspect of the note business because you just don't see a lot of them. I've never bought a partial from a bank. Okay. The bank's not going to sell you a partial. A partial is good if you're using your own funds and you've got a smaller amount for the most part. Okay. So if you want to take your 4 grand in an IRA or your 10 grand in a rollover, or something like that, and use it to go buy a partial, where you get some cash flow for 10, a year, 2 years, 3 years, stuff like that, that's not a bad thing. But a lot of people, oh, I'm just going to use partials because I don't have any money. I've not raised any private capital. So if you're only looking at partials, the question I'm going to ask, well, are you marketing for any capital? And then usually 9 times out of 10, no, I'm not marketing for any money. Why not? Well, I'm scared to. Oh, yes, you can try to squeeze blood out of a rock, but let's make it smarter here and use that same marketing effort. There's a lot of private capitalists on the sidelines just waiting for somebody to reach out to them and say, hey, I got a deal. You got an IRA that's been sitting there not making anything. Let's make it a win-win. Tom Henderson out of Dallas has probably got the best partial plan I could talk about. I'll give you 10 months for 12 months. That's a 20% cash and cash return on that stuff. And return is great, but I always like dealing in bigger returns where it's got a comma in there, on a monthly cash flow basis. It's kind of like seconds. Everybody talks about, oh, what do you think about buying seconds? Because they're cheaper and they're smaller balances. Well, you got to buy 5 seconds really to get one to pay off. And seconds are the most overpriced asset class right now. And when you have a depreciating market in a lot of cases, seconds, you got to buy seconds. You're going to throw 3 or 4 in a folder and wait for that borrower to foreclose or refinance out. Or if they file bankruptcy, that second can be stripped. That doesn't ever make sense to me. So seconds aren't like they used to be where there's like 5 cents on the dollar. So I like dealing in the first space. I think you're in better control there. So use raise capital for that. But if you got small balances or you got a small IRA account for your kids, something like that, yeah, you can buy a couple partials for that stuff, but you're not going to get to where you want to be buying the partial most of the time.
Nice. Okay. I want to spin back to something we talked about in our first interview. We touched on marketing, particularly to SDIRA investors. We talked about networking with other node investors. And one thing that I've told a lot of people that I talk to, especially who are seeing my content and they're coming in new, this is something they're unfamiliar with, is if you're not in a position where you have the capital to invest already, you're going to have to raise capital, which takes time. It's a process. But the one thing that you can do is build social capital, which is forming relationships with people, building rapport, things like that. And you've mentioned several times it takes at least 5 touches to kind of get a commitment from somebody. So when it comes to building that social capital and forming those relationships, how do you suggest people go about that? Because you don't want to be every time you touch somebody, hey, are you ready to commit? Are you ready to put up some money? Like, how do you kind of build on those relationships?
You mean you don't want to be the annoying asshole that's calling them every time that they avoid you at the Christmas parties and the networking events? What's
Exactly.
wrong with that now? Come on, buddy. Now, here's what this is one thing that social media is so good for is just touching base with people. Now, not everybody's going to see your content. What Facebook only allows like 1 to 5% of your connections to see that. It's the same thing on most social. But that's why building rapport and building an email database and having a CRM tool can really help that more so than anything else. And that's what, it's a 21st century. You have to start marketing like it's that versus the old way of doing business. You got a lot of Betty blue hairs or Bob blue hair, gray hairs out there that are still trying to think it's old business. It's not the model these days. That's why a podcast and a YouTube channels are a great way to share content and share your knowledge base with it. And then you look at what every other social platform, Instagram, TikTok. TikTok's not just about popping and locking these days. You know what I mean? Every channel, LinkedIn including it too, is really leveraging short-term, videos, short-form content. We started leveraging short-form content back in April of this year, and it took our YouTube channel from 10,000 views to 90,000 views a month. Okay, more subscribers, more people watching that little bit of basis, that 3-minute nugget, sharing an idea, sharing a strategy, something like that. Doesn't need to be long. Everybody out there, if you're working on a deal and you've got a list of notes or something, do a short video about that deal. Hey, I'm working on this deal in San Antonio, Texas. You don't have to give away the address. Heck, if you don't have it under contract or in the bidding process, don't share the address, right? But hey, here's a picture of this property, on the north side of San Antonio. The borrower owes 200. The house is worth 180. We have an offering at 100,000 to buy this note. We're going to either A, get the borrower back on track, and that will yield 18% cash and cash return to us on a monthly basis. If they don't play ball, then we'll foreclose and potentially yield somewhere around 60 to 70 grand at the foreclosure auction. If it doesn't sell at auction, we'll take the property back, fix it up, and then sell it and make an additional money. If you've got 100 grand sitting in an IRA making nothing, I'd love to talk with you about how we can put your money to work, put that lazy assets making above average returns for you. Let's talk. That's what it comes down to, sharing the opportunities, sharing a picture of the property you're making an offer on, sharing your past experience about a rehab project that you did, or even a wholesale deal. Hey, we got this property contract, we flipped it for a wholesale profit of 50 grand. You ain't got to go say, hey, you want to invest with me? But you say that in a great way of sharing what you got going on. I mean, the number one resource that most investors lack on is building an email database. Yes, if you market your business on socials, that's great. It's free, but you don't really own that database. You can get deplatformed, or they can shut down your account for stupid reasons. If you have an email database, that and like an RSS feed are the two most valuable pieces of resources you can have. And then being able to communicate with your email database, your warm target audience once a week, and sharing. And here's the number one strategy. I'm gonna share this with you. Is if you send an email once a week to your warm database, whether it's 10 people or 10,000 people, here's the easy formula for you. Once a week, okay? Every month out there has a holiday, right, Brian? So one email you send out to your entire database is Happy Thanksgiving, Happy Halloween, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Hope you had a great time with a picture of you and your family. That's one just touch point, okay? Realtors have been doing this for years by sending out crappy flyers like the pumpkin pie recipe every month, and that's the biggest piece of crap out there, right? But sharing something valuable with your network is valuable, and that adds that little extra value of touch of building rapport without having to do work. Another thing, if you're in your local market and you're going to go to your local RIA club meeting once a month, that's another email. Hey, this week I'm going to the local RIA club. There's going to be a local rehabber there. Ray Sasser is going to talk about rehabbing houses. I'm a note guy. Love to meet you if you want to come out. Love to talk investing. Let's just chat. I'll buy you a beer or a cup of coffee. All right. That's half of the emails. The other one could be a past deal that you worked on or a deal that you're making an offer on. Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know. Do you know who that guy is, Brian? You're a little fan of Gary V, right?
I know Gary V. Yeah.
I know Gary V. I've had the chance to meet Gary a couple times. Very nice guy. But he always said, and he had a book that wrote out years ago called Jab, 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 Right Hook, right? That's what you've got to think of your marketing. The jab is, hey, I'm going out to the local RIA club. Another jab, hey, happy Halloween. Another jab, hey, we're looking at buying this piece of property. Here's where it's located. If you're looking to put some lazy, that's an easy play. And then the right hook is the ask. So you give, jab, 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 right hook, in saying you build that foundation. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're working on. Here's where I'm subliminally creating the movie Inception, where you start thinking about real estate, you think about Brian or whatever your name is. You know what I mean? You start something that you want to start people thinking, I need to talk to Scott. I need to talk to Brian. I need to talk to Laura. I need to talk to Steve, because you've shared that content and it comes across on a weekly basis. You're planting that thing once a week to them, and you can see who's opened your email through a CRM. That's most valuable. Oh, you got a 20% open rate? These are the people that make sense then. If you really do need to follow up with them, you see that they've opened all 5 of your emails, then you can send an email to them. Hey, man, I saw that you checked out my email. I've got a deal. Didn't know if you might know somebody who might be interested.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the subliminal, this isn't for you kind of close, the takeaway close. Hey, I got a deal. Can I tell you about what I'm working on? And go that route. Versus what most people do is, hey, I got a deal. I need funding. And they have no type of rapport with people. So that's the thing, is understand you're going to be an investor. As a real estate investor, you're not going to do it for just a year. Most real estate investors never retire. We just, get better. And understand, if you start building that email list and start reaching out to people and stuff like that, building that stuff, that's a resource you're going to use for years and years and years. You just got to use it. Unfortunately, most people will put their database into a CRM, send one email blast out, see they've only got a 20% open rate, and nobody responded, so they give up on it. And that's the number one mistake when it comes to marketing, when it comes to raising capital, is you got to understand 80% sales comes after the 5th contact. So if you do it once a week, you're looking at week 6 before you really start raising capital. If you only do it once a month, that's 6 months. There's a big difference there. You know what I mean, Brian?
Got you. That makes sense. That makes sense. You gotta stay top of mind. Gotta stay top of mind. Let's go back to, you mentioned you gotta move like it's the 21st century, and we continue to see developments in just the internet, technology. We talked about AI, Scott, in our last interview. Are there any other ways that you see AI becoming a more useful tool within note investing, as far as analyzing deals, analyzing new markets, keeping up with that contact list and building rapport and stuff like that. How do you see AI being able to boost the potential of a note business?
So one of the big things is in the due diligence side of things, like taking a copy of the collateral file or a copy of a bankruptcy filing report and uploading it into like ChatGPT and asking for it to come up with the points, or giving it a checklist of documents required, and making ChatGPT double check your collateral file in seconds to tell you, hey, this is here, this is here, this is missing. We've already started implementing that. Or even taking a spreadsheet of potential deals, a tape, and uploading that tape in a spread into it, and giving requirements what you're looking for, and it coming back with some deals. That's still kind of shaky a little bit. I don't like it when ChatGPT is recommending me to buy non-performing notes in New York.
Mhm.
All right. But it's stuff that you hone more so than anything else. I can record a podcast episode and have it completely up, ready to release in roughly about 30 minutes, because of the transcription services, the rewriting services, of them being able to write the episode or the description in my voice, in my humor. You know what I mean? That helps a lot. That saves a lot of time. That saves money instead of having to pay a VA or a person full time doing that work. It gives it done in seconds. So that's the thing you have to realize is just starting to use some of these tools to help you get out. I've got a buddy, Matt Wolf, who's probably the best AI guy out there when it comes to releasing all the different things. And I've known him for, golly, it's probably 8 years now. And that's the thing. I go and I follow people that are doing great things, and I ask them, where are you learning from? How can I implement this in my business? I mean, we've had chat bots and stuff like that, which have been great on social. You'll see more of that. I mean, who hasn't had a LinkedIn comment hit by 20 AI agents over in Pakistan? That happens. But you can use it to that touch base. What I love about our AI clone, Brian, is if somebody actually registers for it or logs into Google, I can have my AI clone follow back up with them and say, hey, you were working on this problem. Did you get it solved? If you didn't, check out this episode. Or, hey, you were checking out this. We just got a tape in. And you said you were interested in Michigan and North Carolina. Here are the 6 assets in Michigan and North Carolina that were on this tape. You know what I mean? That's mind blowing to have that stuff done. But that's what it comes down to, is it's getting faster. It's going to help you make decisions faster. I still have to look at stuff to make sure it's the right state and make sure it's the right stuff. And you're still always going to have to review that, but it really can help you shrink that due diligence process into minutes, which would usually take days, and then also help you identify opportunities if you're willing to do a little slice and dicing on that spreadsheet in the front end. So just embracing that, embracing the marketing side, it can really help you just touch base sooner, faster, more often, and be that person in their head when they think of you or think of note investing.
All right. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's with everything that we have at our disposal, it's in a way easier than ever to kind of get into any industry, but especially one where there's so much, paperwork and so much follow up and things like that. It makes that process a lot more streamlined. So I think that's great. Um,
We had a guy went to my AI clone the other day, and he asked, "Can you write a business plan for me as a new note investor?" And my clone answered back, "Yes. Which states would you like? What kind of return are you looking for?" Well, like 15 questions later, it had created this whole plan for them to target stuff, and then help them create an email blast campaign, and even help them identify things to put in their pitch deck to target. That's the great thing, is using tools like that to speed up that learning curve so much faster. That's number one. I mean, if you're not using that, you're already behind the 8 ball, and somebody's going to beat you to the punch faster and more efficient than if you're trying just as like, oh, I'm just going to do this all myself. You can't be a lone wolf these days.
where can we find your AI clone? I think you mentioned it in the first one, but what's the
Yeah,
link?
it's pretty easy. If you go to our website, you'll see a orange dot. You can click on there and talk to Clone Scott, or you can go to delphi.ai/Scott Carson and get access to it that way there for you too.
Okay, cool. Um, So we're building out these businesses, and part of building any business is going to be building a good team, right? You want to have a good team around you to allocate or delegate, I should say, delegate different responsibilities and such. Who are the key players that a note investor needs to have on their team?
So that's really great. Very, very important. Number one is going to need to be a good servicing company. Okay. And not all servicing companies are created equal. All of them have holes in their system. Some are great, others downright suck. Okay. So talk with people out there. We have 3 or 4 servicers that we work with at any given time, depending on what we've bought, and retain servicing with or move stuff over to for you. So it all depends too on what states you're buying in. So understand the state you're buying and make sure your servicing company is licensed to collect debt in those states. That's the important thing. Secondly, you're going to need real estate attorneys in every state that you're buying in that can understand the foreclosure process, that can help you out with that. Thirdly, you're going to need realtors. Some investors like to talk, oh, I don't need realtors. No, you really do need realtors. Realtors have really still have their pulse on, I mean, the thumb on the pulse of the market. So they're going to give you the best value when it comes to knowing the values, days on market, and what's going on with the neighborhood. Nationwide BPO companies are not bad, and that's a great vendor to have to pull a BPO. Make sure it's a drive-by appraisal, not something from the National Association of Realtors Real Property Reports. That's not bad, but that's more than an AVM. So realtors, title company, attorneys, and then you also having a network of people to help you out, rehab crews in an area when you take a property back, private lenders or people that can refer you to private lenders. You know, I always say, like I said on the last event or last episode, everybody's a buyer, seller, or funding source. So your network comes in really valuable. There'll be times we'll reach out to our network and say, hey, you got a realtor in Wills Point, North Carolina. I need somebody to drive by this 5-acre parcel for me and put eyes on it. You know, or just one, you know, oh, I'm gonna reach out to Bill Grismer in Columbus, Ohio. He'll drive by this property for me and give me his true opinion of it and go from there. So your network is important. Don't worry if you don't have a network, you can start building a network from day one. But those are the biggest keys for you. Having good vendors, you know, we've worked with Baldwin Advisory Group with Dickie Baldwin over there for, you know, we helped him launch it back at one of our mastermind events in Dallas years ago. And he's a really great resource for us when it comes to due diligence stocks and stuff like that. And then, so having a vendor like that can help you out with stuff, just understanding that referrals and having a network are almost more important than you trying to go out and build it yourself because there's other people that have done it. So there's a book, Who Not What. Okay. Reach out to the who. Reach out to networking. Hey, do you have an expert? What states are you buying in? Why do you like buying in those states? There's plenty of stuff to go out there. So, you know, a lot of investors get overwhelmed with the fact that, like, oh, I only want to buy my own market. Well, are you seeing a lot of notes in that own market? You know, like you're in San Diego, right? Do you see a lot of non-performing stuff out there in San Diego? Not really, right?
Nope.
So where are you? What states are you? What states are you buying in?
I see Texas. I see the Midwest a lot. I see some Ohio, some Illinois. I see some Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't see too much California. So that's
No,
enough.
I mean, if you do, it's overpriced, right? Texas is a great market, but it's also kind of overpriced. But you said Midwest. I think Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, those are my three favorite states because it's the bigger bang for the buck.
Mhm.
And so if you're a brand new note investor, well, then pick out the cities, the biggest cities in those three states, and find you a realtor and start looking at stuff in this, that gives you more opportunity to review stuff, the more likelihood to get a deal closed or to have an offer approved, and easier to find something in a bigger area versus, you know, Indianapolis, Indiana versus some podunk town out in the middle of nowhere. So that's the thing. Stick to the bigger areas and your vendors will be easier to find for you too.
Okay. In the beginning, you talked about being the bank, right? Where we're not just the landlord, the investor. We are taking over as the bank. But unlike a bank or a larger institution, we can kind of take a more detailed approach in a sense to our borrowers' situations and things. And one of the things that you mentioned was turning non-performing borrowers back into performers. So what is it that you look for to indicate this may be someone who I can get performing again?
So I love this question because I know this is a question you coming from you. Inquiring minds want to know. So the key difference, people are like, why would I ever want to buy a non-performing note, a deadbeat borrower, right? Somebody who's not paying, why would I do that? Here's the thing. If you've been around the business or been around people long enough, you know that bad things happen to good people all the time. COVID happened, people getting laid off, people go through divorce, all sorts of things. Okay. I've been there, done that, and I think that's why I empathize a little bit more with distressed borrowers now than I did beforehand. But I think there's such a huge opportunity in big yield play because if you're buying a non-performing where a borrower hasn't paid, what I do is a little bit of a checklist is look at how far they've not been paying. Now, if they were non-performing prior to COVID, they haven't paid, they're not going to reperform. That's a straight up, we're going to foreclose on that person because during COVID, everybody had the opportunity to get out of jail, right? To do anything, they could just not pay, and they could take advantage of that and forbearance stuff like that. That's fine. So that's my first checklist. Okay, if they're more than 5 years behind, we know we're going to foreclose. We're not going to offer them a loan mod. If it's owner occupied, they have more emotional equity in that property than really anybody else than a renter does, or tenant. So looking at things, are they still taking care of the property, or is they have kids because they don't want to move their kids from schools and stuff like that. And knowing how expensive rent is these days, it's going to cost them more monthly to rent a place than it would be to pay their mortgage. So if they're living in it and we can buy it at a good price, and if we can get them to bring a couple months to the table, not the year behind they are 2 years behind. Hey, can you bring 4 months to the table? 9 times out of 10, that's going to be a double-digit return for us, somewhere in the mid-teens. That's a pretty good day, right? To do that, keep somebody in the house, hold it, get them paying on time for 12 months. Well, if I bought it at 50, 60 cents on the dollar, I could turn around in 12 months and sell it at 80, 90 cents on the dollar and make a big tap into that note equity side without ever having to foreclose or deal with any property management. That always made more sense to me to do that versus having to fork out foreclosure costs and rehab costs, stuff like that. And I already have my ready built-in buyer in there. So that's what I like about non-performing is there's that opportunity to do some good, make money, keep people in their houses, and make a good yield without having to do all the work of toilets, tanks, and trash outs and foreclosures. So that's one of the big things. Is it occupied? Is it, that's not saying we won't do it for tenants and rental properties. We will do that because it gives us another bargaining chip for the landlords. Like, listen, if you don't pay, don't start paying, we're going to foreclose and throw a judgment against all your other properties. All right. But owner occupied, if you can keep somebody stay in their house, that's a good day. Make good money. Not only now, it's got like I call it a three bucket system. Back payments, monthly payments with maybe a little bit extra per month. And then the third thing is that payoff in the back end, or you're selling a note off to an IRA investor, another fund, or back to Wall Street in some cases too.
Nice. Cool, cool. Yeah, that question was for me.
Good, 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 good. I figured so.
Yeah. I got one more for you before we get out of here. When we talk notes, we're typically talking, residential properties, single families, duplexes, small multi, stuff like that. But there obviously are a lot of other kinds of notes out there. We have commercial notes. We have, apartment complexes, multifamilies. We have business notes now, which I'm just seeing pop up. More mobile homes. One, do you see any indication that any of these other paths are worth looking into? And is there any real benefit to picking another niche, I guess, other than just your traditional notes?
Yeah, so let's clarify because you're right. We are starting to see some people advertise business notes. And I talked to my friend David Barnett, who is one of the top business brokers in not only the United States, but also Canada. He's also spoken at the Noteworthy Summit years ago in Las Vegas. And don't take my advice. Buying a business note that you didn't originate or you're not the actual original buyer of the business is the worst investment you can make. It's the riskiest debt you can buy out there versus unsecured debt. Okay? Because if you're buying a business note, you didn't know how that was structured, you don't know the non-compete clauses and stuff like that. Yeah, you can do some due diligence. But only reason it would make sense for you to buy a note on a business is if you actually are in that business. And it's going to make sense because at some point you're probably going to have to step in to take over that business so they get non-performing. And that's like the number one rule when it comes to buy a note. Never buy a note you don't want to end up owning. So if you're buying a business note and you don't want to ever be in that type of business, don't buy the note. Okay? Seriously, don't do that. Now, when it comes to commercial notes, yeah, there's a lot of distressed commercial stuff out there. Actually, I started off buying commercial notes, Brian, buying 10, 20, 30, 75 unit apartment complexes by buying the note at a discount and then either working it to regentrify the asset to get it back on track or sell it off to another owner operator. So commercial notes are great. You just have to understand the process that is a little bit different and also understand too, if you're thinking you're going to buy a note on a 200 unit apartment complex at a huge, huge discount, that's not going to happen these days because banks right now on the commercial stuff they're willing to foreclose, take the asset back and operate it for 2 to 3 years because they don't want to take a huge haircut loss. They'll foreclose to wipe out all the mechanics liens and other things and take the property back if the current operators aren't doing a good job. But you're not going to go, oh, I'm going to buy a 200 unit apartment complex at 50 cents on the dollar. Not going to work that way. Now, there are opportunities in that smaller balance side, really 5 million and below commercial real estate side. There's a lot of mom and pop operators out there that banks don't want to own that stuff. And so you can get some discounts on that stuff. But it's like with any asset class, you have to understand how that works. If you're going to buy a mobile home note, understand what's going on in the mobile home. Is it going to be secured by real estate or is it just a chattel loan? All right. where they can just take the property and they can leave. They can drive off with it. So it's with any niche, understand what's going on in that niche, but specialize in a couple things. You'll see stuff and opportunities. Like I just got a huge list of mobile home notes, but they're all chattel loans. So there's no property, there's no land attached with it. So I got a repo an RV out in the middle of Mejia, Texas. That doesn't make sense for me. I don't want to own that little shit box. You know what I mean? Now, if it was on 5 acres out there, oh, it would be worth it with the actual property attached to it. That might make sense. So understand the nuances with anything, but there's opportunities. Don't try to be a jack of all trades. When you define your buy box, you'll be a lot happier and actually a lot more financially better off too, because you won't be chasing all these one-off weird squirrels. Know your buy box. Pick two, maybe three niches that work well with each other. One strategy that a lot of note investors really forget about is when you're getting tapes in of non-performing borrowers and non-performing notes. Those are great leads for potential subject to deals to work it on a strategy to contact the borrower separately and see if they're willing to walk away from the property. And you could take over that mortgage as long as you go through your attorney, do all the right proper things there. But potential taking over property with a 2, 3, 4% mortgage on it that you can turn around and do a wraparound mortgage, or if you do want to own rental property, that's on arbitrage it to a renter for a period of time, or lease option if you're not in Texas. So that's another opportunity that most people forget about, but it works well, working well with that non-performing note side.
Nice, nice. All right, Scott. Well, thank you again. That's all I got for you this go round. Let us know again where we can find you and how we can pick your brain some more.
Really easy. You can go to weclosenotes.com. That's our main website. You'll see our podcast, our videos there. We go to We Close Notes YouTube channel. Listen to the Note Closure Show podcast, #1 podcast out there for note investors. We just celebrated. I just recorded my 1040th episode on the
Wow.
podcast, man. But most importantly, if you're listening to this and you didn't do this the first time I was on, you need to make sure you can hit subscribe and follow Bryan. Subscribe to this. He's doing a great job. It's your second time around, so you have zero excuses why you don't hit the subscribe button now. So go do that. We as podcasters and content creators love to hear from our audience. So leave a comment. Tell him how great job he's doing. Even if you don't like me, go check out the other stuff. It's good stuff.
You heard it here first from Mr. Scott Carson himself. I appreciate you and your time, man. We'll be in touch. We'll talk some more. Thanks again and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Bryan. You too, buddy. Have a great rest of your week.